If traditional sales tactics have ever made you cringe, you are not alone. Today's guest, Aleasha Bahr, is the world's #1 authority on black sheep sales, and she's here to help you ditch every outdated, broy sales strategy you were told you had to follow. With 15 years of experience and a proven method that has helped sell tens of millions of dollars in offers, Aleasha shows business owners how to convert up to 80% of leads without pressure, pretending, or feeling like a completely different person. We will be talking about how to sell without scripts, lead with your values, and finally make your sales process feel as aligned as the rest of your business. So, Aleasha, welcome to the show. I am so excited to have this conversation with you.
Hey, Haley, I'm so excited and honored to be here.
So, go back to the beginning, as far back as you want to go, but what were the moments or what led you to starting Black Sheep Sales?
I think it would have to go back to my first job. So I have a lot of entrepreneurs in my family. And so I had no illusions about how hard it was. It's definitely stressful. So I wasn't immediately like, I want to be a business owner. I worked for a network of websites that were all about different travel in Mexico. And I sold digital advertising to like hotels and stuff like that. People really loved working with me just because I actually cared about the results. And that kind of continued as I went to sell digital advertising for radio stations and newspapers. I was just always a natural at sales. And if you ask a natural at sales, that's somebody who never took any sales training, but everybody wants to buy from them, like, what do you do? They say, well, I don't really sell. And everyone's like, well, I don't know what the hell that means. And the reason that they're saying that is that they're letting someone know when they should not buy what they're selling because it doesn't make sense for that person and isn't going to be a good use of their money. And it's absolutely magnetic for people because all of a sudden it's such an unusual experience to have somebody care about your best interest instead of just their commission. So I had a marketing agency after that. And then I miss sales a lot. And I noticed that there was this huge gap for sales training, especially for founders of businesses. So founders are like great at what they do. They love what they do. And they have to sell it in order to get to the next level. And many of them aren't natural salespeople. And they're also too close to it to really articulate it in a way that's compelling. So a lot of times founders are like experts at whatever it is that they're selling and they give too much information. They're educating too much. You can't sell and educate at the same time, right? But all the training that was offered to them was like, they'd get to it and they'd be like, is this really it? This is what sales is. Like, this is what I'm supposed to do. Like, this feels so out of alignment for me. And because of that, it didn't work for them. I started working with founders and creating custom language for them and questions that articulated the value of what they did. So people wanted to work with them and at a higher price point too. And then I started to notice these patterns in the frameworks and systems I was creating for them. And over the past 6 years, it's been fleshing out this step-by-step format that obviously you customize to yourself. But instead of mainstream sales where everyone is a yes, and if you didn't get a yes, you failed. Black sheep sales is if it's a fit, it's a fact, and there's no selling involved. And mainstream sales is like this interrogation where only the prospect talks at first. Like, you're not supposed to talk, they say. And then the salesperson talks during the pitch. And then there's this objection battle at the end. And instead, black sheep sales is really this conversational exchange throughout the entire conversation. So it feels a lot more natural and normal. Like, I don't know why sales experts recommend a strategy that deviates so far from normal human conversation. It's bizarre.
Thank you for sharing because it's so interesting. We never just like typically start the business that ends up actually being the business and it just unfolds as something completely different. But so many of the things that you're saying really resonate with me. I know a lot of people that teach sales, but everyone has their own little flair to it. And I love your process and just the black sheep element. It's fun. It also gives that fun and it kind of plays into, like you said, that natural conversation, right? So Because you teach this method called black sheep sales, what does that actually look like in practice?
In practice, it's about getting really clear on who is a fit, like who is your ideal audience and who is your anti audience. So that's the thing that a lot of people forget to think about. And they're often only thinking of their ideal audience in like demographic and niche types of ways. You really want to think deeper than that. For most founders, they're having like an ongoing relationship with a client. So you don't want a nightmare client. So if you can think about the patterns in the people who are really happy working with you, who are like, man, you nailed it. This was amazing. What did they have in common? And the people who weren't happy with results, because inevitably that happens, especially at the beginning, as you're figuring things out, did they have a different timeline for expectations? Did they want a result that wasn't realistic? Did they expect you to be at their beck and call? Did they not have certain foundational things in place that you need? Or maybe they didn't have staff that supported the delivery of whatever you're delivering. And then you can really clearly communicate that everywhere on your marketing and in your verbal conversations. Like I don't see any red flags here. You're doing this alone, or you haven't created an offer that people want. You seem like a great fit actually, because you have gotten over 100 people successful results. You've got an EA and a marketing coordinator that can get all the things I need. So, like you're able to clearly communicate that. So what it does is that person, oh yeah, you're right. I'm not alone. And I do have those things. They can self-identify. And as a result, they're more likely to buy, because everyone's wondering like, yeah, but who doesn't this work for? Right? Like who's the exception here? Like right before you invest, most people are like, oh, what if I'm wrong? What if this is a bad use of my money? And I want to know when it doesn't work. And so we want to tell them when it doesn't work so they can take that off of their mind and know with confidence that they're the fit.
I haven't actually thought of it in that way, but when you say that, I'm thinking back to like, if just one nightmare client comes to mind, but I can kind of see the similarities between who I absolutely love working with, because for me, all of the clients that I bring on, it is a long-standing relationship. So we have to be able to communicate and get along. And otherwise, not only are they not going to get results, it's going to create a whole lot of overwhelm and just like, I don't know, so much more on my plate that I don't need. And I remember finally releasing this client, and it was just like a weight lifted off of my shoulders. And so when you're talking about this, even just in the beginning, how to set yourself up for knowing who you're talking to, that makes so much sense.
It can be really easy to accept a nightmare client, especially if you're going by mainstream methods, which are like everyone who with a credit card is a yes, take their money. The truth is, like, some money is not better than no money. Like, if you have a nightmare client, they are draining you in so many ways that is actually making you make less money.
So that's kind of the start of it, looking at who your ideal client is. Do you do any type of pre-screening before you get people on calls, or do you teach anything like that of making sure you're getting the right people on the calls so that your conversations are leading somewhere, or it's not just a whole bunch of conversations that don't end in sales?
Yeah, it's such a big part of it. So mainstream is definitely like sales is a numbers game, volume. Every no gets you closer to a yes. Sales doesn't have to be a numbers game if you're intentional about who you're talking to. So a lot of people will look at their numbers and be like, oh, I closed 20% of the people I talk to. So if I want to bring on 10 people, then I need to talk to 50 people, right? Instead of looking at how they can increase so that they only need to talk to, let's say, 20 people to get 10 people. Wouldn't that be a better use of time? And it's very possible. And also, like, people can tell when you're treating them as a numbers game. Like, you can feel that. So it stops being a numbers game when you stop treating people like numbers. So knowing who your anti-audience and your audience is and being really clear about that ahead of time. When booking a call on your calendar or something, I do recommend asking some questions ahead of time. And sometimes people are like, oh, well, then what if that makes them not book an appointment? And I'm like, well, then they're not a fit. If they can't take 5 minutes to fill out a form. Does that sound like a good client? Like, definitely not. And some people are just like excited in the beginning that anyone will take a meeting with them. They're like, yes, I got a meeting. But after you've done that, you're so tired. Like, you show up on these conversations and you're just like almost dreading them. Like, is this person going to waste my time? It's hard to get excited and they can feel that energy from you. So when you know, oh my God, this person is exactly who I do amazing things for, you're going to show up on that call so much different. You're going to be excited about it. You're going to spend less time. You're going to make more sales. You're going to get better clients. Only good things happen from being intentional about who you're talking to.
Yes. Oh, I 100% agree. Actually, when I started implementing a booking form, it made such a difference in who showed up on the call, but also how I showed up on the call. Because the questions not only like screened to make sure it was the right person, but I also knew like what was their biggest challenge that we could talk about on the call. Was it the right fit for me? Were they ready to invest in, in what I had to offer? And not only did I end up closing more of those sales because it was the right fit person, but I also didn't have as many calls that were not right fit people. So I love that you say that because I think it's so important. And I ask a lot of, not a lot, I keep it to like 3 to 5 questions, but it also helps with my messaging and marketing. Do you find that as well?
Yeah. So I think you're talking about having like a short form answer where people type in their own words.
Yes.
Yeah. I could see that helping with marketing for sure. A lot of times I like to make it like multiple things that they can check because many times people don't realize all the stuff that you do, that you can do for them and the result of all of those things. So I like both. I like a short form answer. And I also like being like in your case, for example, do you want support getting higher quality leads? Do you want support in growing your online following? You
Yeah.
could have such a wide variety of things that you help with that people could be like, man, I didn't even know she did all that.
I like that because often it is like, oh, I didn't know you helped with that part. So I could see that really helping. And it's sometimes having those multiple choice makes it much easier for them to kind of follow through and go with that. So the next thing I wanted to ask was sometimes people feel like they have to follow a specific script, or there's a lot of people teaching out there that make sure you follow this script or it's not going to work, right? Like I've seen that, I have heard that, but I know that you think differently. So share more about maybe the process of once you get on the call.
Anybody that's like, you have to follow this script, I'm sorry. That script works for that person.
Yes.
That person is a different person from you. They have a different personality and they probably have a different offer and a different audience. So to expect that that exact script would work the same for every human in the world is ludicrous. And I just like the gaslighting that happens, like the shaming that happens when it doesn't work for you. It's like, oh, that's a you problem. That's not my strategy. That's not my script. Not only is that strategy designed for the person who created it, it's also impossible to script every way a conversation could go. Humans are the most unpredictable thing on the planet. And in a sales conversation, there are two of them. And they could be having a good day, they could be having a bad day. And that affects how they're going to show up as the human they are in that moment as well. So I like frames, like a way of positioning your service that is appealing and results focused. So you always kind of want to position it in a similar way. Ideally, you want to customize it more to the person you're talking to. And some answers that you want to make sure and get is, I should say, because sometimes people focus too much on the questions and they're like, well, I asked the question, but they didn't get the answer that they needed. And they didn't like follow up with deeper questions to get the right answer. They're just like, I asked the questions. No, okay, let's focus on the answers that you want in order to know that this person is a good fit for you and how you could make the biggest difference for them. So I do really like having that laid out, but there has to be room for unpredictability. You need to be able to lean into your intuition and curiosity and ask deeper questions based on things that they're saying. And so those are some of the soft skills that I work on with clients. For example, objections is one we work on a lot because people like to just overcome them, which feels like you're invalidating somebody. You're just dismissing a concern. You're just like, oh, it's not a concern. Okay, well, I'm not convinced that it's not a concern just because you said, oh, it's not a concern. Instead, like get curious about it. So if somebody's like, this seems really time consuming, like, well, how much time do you have? So we practice those softer skills that like can't necessarily all be scripted out because you don't want to script out every possible objection that someone could have and every way they could phrase it. Because there's so many ways the same objection can be phrased, the same question can be asked. Like it's about what's behind it.
I love that way of looking at handling objections because I think that's something that comes up all the time. There are those objections or the questions that are kind of hidden in the form of an objection. So going back to them and just really digging in on why they feel that way or why they think that way. Because sometimes I feel in some of my sales conversations, when they've brought up an objection that maybe I wasn't ready for, it almost feels like awkward in the way I respond. So I think just really diving in to figure out why they feel that way almost feels more natural.
Yeah, it allows you to actually address what the concern is because a lot of times they don't even know exactly what the concern is, right?
Mhm.
So when people come to you in a sales conversation, they're probably need help with some clarity around their goals and what's possible for them and what's going on. So being able to guide them through that clarity, and that also happens in objections. So many sales are lost because people are confused or have a lack of clarity about what you said. So when you ask questions about their objection, it often untangles itself. So, like in the example of, oh, well, how much time do you have? They're like, oh, well, I have, I don't know, 5 hours a week. And you're like, well, you only need one. So you're fine. And they're like, oh my God, I thought it was way more time consuming. Like, it's so much more powerful for you to figure that out together instead of just telling them that it's not time consuming.
Yes, because probably what we're perceiving and thinking about what they're perceiving and thinking is probably completely different. I know a big one that I've gotten and that many of my clients have is the objection around pricing.
Yeah.
Or, wow, I didn't expect it to be so high, or that feels like a lot. How do you handle those conversations, or how do you have your clients prepare for some of those maybe pricing objections?
So this is like something that needs to be taken care of at multiple points. A lot of times people say that's expensive because they didn't have the right frame of reference. So, like, expensive compared to what? Like, what did you have in mind? And what made you have that in mind? Did you like see it somewhere? Did you hear it somewhere? And a lot of times, whatever they're thinking of is drastically different from what you do. So, for example, I don't know, AI is $20 a month. Okay, well, you have to know how to prompt it, and it's still wrong like 90% of the time or whatever. This is a human who has 20 plus years of experience understanding your offer and collaboratively working with you. Does that make a difference for you? And if it doesn't, then it's not a fit, and that's fine. But the other thing that needs to happen is, so I really recommend prompting objections early, not specifically maybe the price one, but you can price anchor. So, for example, Hailey, I have no doubt that you do a lot more than copywriting. And
Yes.
I would bet that people don't always understand that. So, when you're able to explain, like in your positioning, like, okay, so I do strategy, copywriting, optimizing offers, audience growth, and like, I don't know if you do design. But so typically you'd have to pay separately for all of those consultants, and it would be like 10,000 a month. Since I have all of that experience in one, it's a lot more affordable and cohesive.
Mm.
So you're able to price anchor early on so that they realize that actually what they're getting is a really great investment level.
Yeah, I like that because I'm just thinking of some of the recent conversations. that I've been having, even with some of my current clients. They're like, oh, I didn't know you did that too. It was like a light bulb moment for them, even though we've been working together for a couple of months. And it's like, yes, I do. And so just making sure, I think even for me, that's more upfront in my messaging and marketing and the things that I'm doing. Because on one of the last podcast interviews I did, we talked about it's so hard. Like I can so easily do this for other people, but for myself, my own messaging, my own marketing is really hard because it's hard to see from the outside in, right? And so just being able to take that step back is important. And so I feel like that even comes in with something that you're doing and helping your clients is like you said in the beginning. They don't even see sometimes all the value that they offer or how their message is coming across in when they show up on sales calls. So do you see that a lot? Is that typically what you help your people with too?
I think that's probably the biggest spot that when you adjust it, makes a huge difference in your results. That is one of the reasons, like in the first 30 days, usually when I work with someone, they immediately make more sales simply because of having a new frame or positioning or messaging language around what they do. Because sales strategy is different from sales. So this happens all the time too with founders who are hiring salespeople and they expect the salespeople to create the sales strategy. And it's like, those are different things. Also, it's different from marketing. Sales language is going to be different from marketing language. So all the time, people are just not doing justice to the value of what they offer. And they're often making it like too confusing for people or too deliverable focused instead of results focused. So they're like, you get this many landing pages and this many emails and this many posts on this many platforms. And that turns it into this, okay, well, I could go with this person and get this many of those. When it's like not about that. It's about the quality and strategy you're getting that makes it all work together. And then the refinement of that strategy. So just adjusting it, when you're an expert at what you do, it's hard to remember what it's like when you weren't an expert at it and like how you needed to hear it to understand it.
When you talk about listing out all the things that they get, like the deliverables, people almost tend to start almost like price shopping or like, if I didn't have those two things, would it be less? So like I started reading that a long time ago. It's like, nope. And even how I talk about in your messaging and marketing, like you're not leading with what they get. You're leading with the result or the outcome, the transformation, right? So it's kind of the same thing. I know it's different, but yes, I have seen that over and over again.
One of the things that's really different about the black sheep sales approach is that whenever you're explaining your services, you ask checking questions. Checking questions that aren't just like make sense or sound good, because those two questions are an automatic yes. People can say that on autopilot. And like, have you ever heard somebody say yes to those? And then you get to the end of the conversation and they say something that makes it very clear that it did not make sense or sound good. So you want to ask a check-in question that's specific to what you said. So for example, Hailey, you might be like, okay, so we start with what you've done up to this point that's worked because we don't want to fix anything that isn't broken. And then identify the gaps that weren't working and create a high-level strategy. So have you ever compared the different things you've tried to see what worked and didn't work? For example, and that makes them have to think about the thing you just said.
That's really good. I'm going to go back to the recording and steal that from a next conversation.
Good. And it'll help you too, because they'll be like, no, I haven't. And you'll say, oh, well, you might be accidentally doing a bunch of stuff or removing stuff that was good. And it all depends on how you judged what worked too. So what metrics were you measuring? Was it vanity metrics or was it clients? Having those questions throughout really helps the person understand the value of what you're doing and retain it for later, because your prospect's just not going to remember your conversation that well. They're not.
So just a follow-up question that had me thinking while you were saying that was, do you think it could easily fall into, if I ask a question like that, let's say, and then they give me an answer, and sometimes I would tend to like lean into educating or coaching on the sales call. And we all know we shouldn't be doing that. So how do you then like bring it back? Or do you see that a lot where you ask these questions and then all of a sudden it goes somewhere else?
No, that's not just you. And that is a great question, Hailey. So you want to keep it high level. So sometimes you can just like have a little reminder in like your frame that's like, keep the point here about measuring the right metrics. So you would just be like, yeah, it makes a big difference when you're measuring the client converting metrics instead of the vanity metrics. Like you just want to keep it there. You don't need to like go into it. So don't like educate, just be like, yeah, and that's something that we look into. That's something that we dive really deep into. We understand what your ultimate goals are. And there might be multiple layers of goals. So we prioritize those and we identify the metrics around them so you can know when you won, when you hit the mark.
I love that. I want to hit on one more point. Way back when you and I started chatting, I think this was like beginning of this year, but something you had said, and I'm not going to get it 100% right, but something I didn't know that you did was also coach other people's sales team or like you hire and train sales teams. But first, the founder has to really understand and be good at sales. Am I correct in saying this, where it's really important? Because a lot of people are like, I hate sales. I just want to have a team that goes out and does it for me. But ultimately, that doesn't really work unless they know how to talk about it. Am I correct in saying this?
So yeah, I do create custom sales systems that I install in a founder's business and then hire the top performing salespeople to run it for them. However, if somebody wants to hand off sales because they quote unquote hate it, that is not a good reason to bring on a salesperson. The right reason to bring on a salesperson is like, I do not have time for this.
Mhm.
Like, I have run out of time. I need to do a lot of things, and sales is very time consuming. So I need somebody to do it for me. So especially if you're looking at like pay for performance, there has to be a certain volume of leads. So people who quote unquote hate sales, a lot of times they don't have leads. So a
Mhm.
salesperson doesn't have anything to do. And if you want them to generate leads, then you have to pay them for that because that is time. And you need to prepare yourself for like at least 90 days to build up a pipeline of paying a base. So a lot of times people will be like, I hate sales, hand it off, and expect someone to work solely on commission without leads. So if somebody's like super busy, they usually have leads and they just need somebody to close those leads for them. But like they don't know how to train that person because they're not a sales coach. And they're like relying on all of the experience and knowledge that they have in their head. And it hasn't been put on paper and systematized. So they need that before a salesperson can pick it up and run with it, because nobody's going to be able to sell like the founder. The founder knows way more. And the salesperson doesn't need to know all that to be good at sales. That's also a common misconception. So yes, but it's not necessarily because they need to know sales really well. It's usually because they don't have the runway to pay somebody a base for 90 days.
Mhm.
And then they don't have leads for them. So it's like, you should probably figure out how to close the ones you have first, get your revenue up, and then you can do all this.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for reframing that. I feel like there was something we talked about that I was like, oh, I didn't know Aleasha did that. And I thought it was pretty cool because I also know, just as the founder yourself, learning sales, like that's something you don't always think of when you first go into business. Like, oh, I have to be really good at sales in order to make my business run. Right. And then when you think about bringing someone else on your team, it's a whole nother ball game that again, we're so in it that we know how to talk about it. And typically like the women that I work with and know, and like you are so passionate about what you're doing and you care about the clients and the results and the business. And so it makes it a lot easier to have those conversations. But I was just talking to one of my clients the other day of I genuinely know when I can help someone and when I cannot. So it comes across as so much more genuine, but also just like, I'm either going to tell you if I can help you or I can't help you. Right. So the ability to be able to say no, just kind of circling back what Tui said in the beginning, is like knowing who you are talking to.
Yeah, that's one of the great benefits to focusing on fit is that when someone's a good fit, you get excited. And
Mhm.
excitement is contagious.
Yes. And so often we get off the call and it's like they are also so excited about all the results that we can create for them. Right. And it's
Yeah.
not, we can't always promise or guarantee they're going to get XYZ result, but we can talk about what's possible. And I think that's what gets them excited.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Aleasha. So I always like to end with, how do you see success now? So, right, so much of what I think, even we were kind of chatting about this before we came on with our kids and schools and all the things, but so often we're chasing someone else's version of success, not necessarily our own. So, what does success look like for you?
Yeah, that's such a good question because so many people are like scale or die. I think
Yeah.
an empire sounds exhausting. I don't want one. So for me, time freedom and financial freedom are like the two measures of success for me. If I can like spend time with my kids right now, before my kids, I was a workhorse. I'm still kind of a workhorse, but I really prioritize. I don't want my kids to ever feel like they're not enough for me to want to spend time with.
Mhm.
That something else is more important to me than them because it just communicates something about like their worth, whether we want that to be how they interpret it or not. And I'm sure after they're grown, I will probably be more of a workhorse because I do love work. But right now, it's definitely time and financial freedom.
It's funny that you say that because I was just talking to my kids at the dinner table last night. And their dreams are, there's this favorite channel on YouTube that they have, and they want to start a YouTube channel so they can have a Lamborghini and then retire. And I forgot what else they said. And it was like, they're like, but what does retire mean? And then like, why do they stop working? I said, well, if you really like what you do, you don't have to like retire early or think about stop working. Like, I love what I do. I like the people I serve, and a long time ago, I thought I just wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And I found that was harder than
Yeah,
actually working. Like, some people are not cut out for it, and I'm one of those people that is not cut out to
me
not
too.
just be a stay-at-home mom. It is hard. It is hard work, and so finding something that I love to do while also being able to spend time with my kids feels like a win-win.
Yeah, I would be a lower quality mom if I was with them all the time. I would have a lot less patience.
Agreed.
Yeah. So I
Totally
think I'm
agree.
a better mom when I can have multiple identities balanced. Like when I can be a business owner and a wife and a friend and a mom, I want to show that and also model that to them, not to lose themselves in one of them.
Yes. Oh, I love that. All right, Aleasha, thank you for joining me today. I will have all your links in the show notes, but if our listeners want to find you, learn more about Black Sheep Sales and work with you, where can they go to find you?
I mean, my website, alichabar.com, and definitely my book has helped many people, which is blacksheepsalesbook.com.
Ooh, perfect. Thank you again for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Haley.